Hello, and welcome to Naperville Preservation's first Zoom event, HPC 101. I'm Becky Simon, and just a heads up, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. Naperville Preservation is your grassroots organization working for historic preservation throughout all of Naperville. We are a completely independent organization and a registered nonprofit 501c3 dedicated to being an independent voice for the historic preservation of buildings and other structures in Naperville. We believe that historic preservation maintains Naperville's historic character, charm, and the hometown feel that draws new residents to Naperville and keeps our existing residents here. Maintaining Naperville's historic character contributes to the economic vitality of Naperville. Our mission goes beyond the historic district, but tonight we're talking about Naperville's Historic Preservation Commission, the Naperville Historic District, and how residents of Naperville can work effectively with their HPC. The Naperville Historic Preservation Commission can be reached online at the city's website. You see a page of that here. The Naperville Historic District is a local district designation with about 320 properties, give or take, including part of the North Central College campus and 253 homes. Our guest tonight is Kathleen Russell. Kathleen is the staff liaison for the Historic Preservation Commission at the City of Naperville. She is a part of the Certificate of Appropriateness process from inquiry to implementation. Kathleen coordinates application submissions, notice requirements, and presentations with the petitioner. She organizes the agenda and prepares the minutes for the HPC's meetings. When building permit applications are submitted within the historic district, Kathleen is the one who reviews the application to confirm its alignment with the approved plans. Tonight, Jane Burke and I will take turns asking Kathleen a few questions. Jane?
Thanks, Becky. And Kathleen, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And to everybody who's on our webinar, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're thrilled to have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the Historic Preservation Commission and its role in historic preservation in Naperville and in the historic district. Kathleen, give us just a few words about yourself.
Yep, thanks, Jane. Hi, Kathleen Russell from the City of Naperville's Planning Services team. As Becky said, I am the staff liaison for the Historic Preservation Commission and been doing great online virtually, and we're excited to share some information during your meeting today.
Thanks. Could you tell us, what is the purpose of HPC, and is HPC related only to the historic district?
Yep, so the Historic Preservation Commission reviews applications for a certificate of appropriateness. They guide the development of the historic building design and resource manual, and also assist in reaching out to the community to create awareness of the Historic Preservation District. The HPC reviews the COA applications in the historic district, but also reviews landmark applications, which can be outside of the historic district.
Okay, great, thanks. How does someone get appointed to the HPC?
So the appointment to the HPC would be through the City Council and the Mayor. We don't currently have any vacancies on the Historic Preservation Commission, but the vacancies can be found on the Boards and Commissions webpage on the City of Naperville's website.
How many commissioners are there?
I believe there are 8 or 9. I'd have to look that up.
I think you're right. I think it's 9. Well, how would you characterize the relationship between the Historic Preservation Commission and City Council? How do the two relate to each other?
So the Historic Preservation Commission will make the final determination on certificate of appropriateness applications, but they can be appealed, and that appeal process goes through the City Council, and the final decision on the appeal would be through the City Council. Also, for landmark applications, the Historic Preservation Commission will hold the public hearing and make a recommendation, but the City Council will have the final approval on landmark applications.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next question. Where can Naperville residents find the guidelines that they need if they want to build in the historic district?
So there are a couple of locations where Naperville residents can find the guidelines of changes and building in the historic district. The first general and most broad section that would be the most comprehensive is in the actual municipal code under Title 6, Chapter 11, which is historic preservation. And then Naperville also has a historic building design and resource manual, which lists it goes in detail on a lot of things. It'll go over the styles of the different residences, but most importantly, it talks about different types of improvements and how they're acceptable, encouraged or discouraged based on the different types of improvements. There's also a helpful chart that I like to point out at the end of the certificate of appropriateness application, and that's kind of a summary, quick check if you're starting off, where you can see there are different columns for does not need approval for a certificate of appropriateness, would need an administrative certificate of appropriateness, or would need HPC approval. And it goes through some of the common improvements that we get inquiries on.
Okay, thank you. How and when does HPC communicate with the residents of the historic district? How do you reach out to them?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we have our every other month meetings on Thursdays, but we also are most recently starting to work on with the HPC and staff a postcard notification system, which will be notifying property owners, current and future property owners, of their historic district status of the property. So just a quick informative, your property is located within the historic district, and we're still working on it. It hasn't come out yet, and we're still working on drafts, but we're hoping to send out an initial wave to all historic district property owners. And then after that, moving forward, we will hopefully send it out to any future property owners, which will receive notification from other Naperville departments that receive the notifications of changes in property owners.
Actually, I have to say that that sounds like a really good initiative. You know, the Naperville Historic District has been around formally since 1986. And you talked about the ordinance and you talked about where to find it. Has the ordinance ever been revised or updated?
Yep, so the ordinance has been revised several times, but most recently in 2019, there were a couple of major sections that were amended in 2019, including the COA process, the landmark application process, and then also the notice requirements for the certificate of appropriateness.
That's really good to know. So somebody who, for example, has been in the historic district for a while might want to review it just to make sure that they're seeing the very latest changes, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and Kathleen, which of our neighboring communities or municipalities also have a designated historic district or a historic preservation commission?
So the two municipalities that I'm aware of are Aurora and Downers Grove that also have some historic preservation activities.
Okay, so we're not alone or unique in having a historic district. Is Naperville's HPC a member of the Illinois Association of Historic Preservation Commissions?
So I don't believe we are part of the Illinois Association of Historic Preservation Commissions, but we are Naperville's active members in the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, Landmark Illinois, and the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Cool. So thanks for sort of giving us the structure and the framework. Now I'd like to get a little more kind of hands-on, if that's okay. What does a homeowner in the historic district do if they decide they want to renovate or remodel their home? What guidelines do they kind of need to follow?
Yep, so I definitely recommend the section of the Municipal Code, Title 6, Chapter 11, the Historic Preservation section of the code. That goes into what type of improvement is allowed without a COA and what improvements are required with certain admin or Historic Preservation Commission approval. And again, you can also go to the certificate of appropriateness, and at the end there's an exhibit that goes through a brief overview, but also going back into the code is definitely best. But as always, anyone can contact the City of Naperville staff through the planning services email or our contact number to ask for clarification questions, or if they've reviewed the code and want to know more information.
Good. That's really important, I think, because sometimes it's, even if you're reading it, you want a little clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Historic Preservation Commission have anything to do with interior renovations?
No, we do not look at interior renovations. So just as a summary, certificate of appropriateness is mainly just look at the primary facade, so things that can be seen from the street. There are obviously exceptions of things that the HPC reviews, for example, demolition permits and new builds in the historic district.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you talked a minute ago about how a resident could, call or email and kind of communicate with somebody in city planning. How early in the process should they begin talking with your group and with HPC itself?
Yep, so any inquiries can go through us, and if we don't know the answer, we'll reach out through the HPC. In terms of when it's best to notify us, the earlier the better. I think the best projects and the most smooth projects that have gone through us have started kind of with a solid idea. We'll get a site plan or a general inquiry. Normally we do need a little bit of concrete information in order to give a direct yes or no if the certificate of appropriateness is needed. But earlier in the process, the better, and the smoother it goes.
Yeah.
So in terms of notifying the city, is City Hall open to the public now, or is it still closed?
So City Hall is open to the public. It's preferable that there is an appointment made, and it depends on, it is open to the public, but not all staff members are at City Hall at this time.
So you would prefer that a homeowner calls you first and makes an appointment?
Yes, that would be preferable right now, yes.
Okay. And while we're talking alphabet soup, what exactly is a COA? What constitutes a COA?
Yep, so lots of acronyms, as with any municipality or organization. So COA is a certificate of appropriateness. A COA can either be a review that is done administratively, so by staff, or it can be done through the Historic Preservation Commission. So the Historic Preservation Commission will actually vote on the proposed improvement. And again, there are a variety of proposed changes that require HPC or administrative approval, but I guess to summarize, it's mainly just on the primary facade and changes on the primary facade. But again, anyone can reach out to us if they have any questions about proposed changes in the historic district.
So what happens if a homeowner's COA application is denied? What if HPC says no, no, no?
Yep, so when a certificate of appropriateness is denied, there is two options. They can either submit a new certificate of appropriateness for a new design or a proposed change, or the certificate of appropriateness decision by the HPC can be appealed to the City Council.
So HPC then does not make the final decision on a COA. A homeowner still has an option after that.
Correct, yes.
Now, how and when would the Planning and Zoning Commission get involved?
Yep, so there are certain cases where proposals will be on a historic district property, but there are additional entitlements that are needed, for example, like a variance or conditional use. So with those cases, the case would go to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission would review the certificate of appropriateness and make the final decision on that, again, unless it is appealed to the City Council. And then moving forward, the HPC would also at the same meeting give a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission based on the entitlements that the Planning and Zoning Commission is making their recommendation on. So if the proposed change requires a variance, for example, the HPC would vote on the certificate of appropriateness. And then they would also make a recommendation for the variance. And then moving forward, the next steps for that application would go to Planning and Zoning Commission for recommendation, and City Council would make the final approval on the variance.
Wow. Wow. I don't think I could say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, I think what you've told us there is, you know, that there are certain things that take precedence over other things, and things have to sometimes happen in a particular order. And of course, I think it's important that we all understand all of that. So assuming that, you know, all of that happens and a project actually begins, what is a field change and what role does HPC have in that?
Yep, so field changes are, like you said, Jane, when the COA is approved, they're finally ready to submit for building permit. The building permit is submitted, and they identify that there's a field change or something that is on the plan that was not approved in the initial certificate of appropriateness. So the staff will review their proposed change and determine if it can be approved administratively or if it needs to go back to the Historic Preservation Commission for re-review.
And so give us some examples of ones that could be approved administratively and ones that would have to go back.
I think we mainly look at those on a case-by-case basis. I'm not sure if there's exact language in the code, but normally we will take a look at the approved plans and talk as a staff, and also discuss with the HPC if it's needed to determine if it needs administrative approval or HPC approval.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you know, I think we all care about the historic district. What does a resident of the historic district do if they see someone in the historic district doing something with their house that seems to be not in keeping with the ordinances and the guidelines?
Yep, so anyone can submit a complaint to code enforcement, and our staff works very closely with code enforcement to determine what are the best next steps with a complaint.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of questions from the audience, and if you don't mind, I want to read them and see if you have any advice for us. The first one, there have been homes built in the historic district that are not historic, and the city allowed them to be built anyway. Is this going to continue? Now that sounds to me very much like, you know, the process that you described, but are there other things you might want to say about that?
Yep, so I would agree, Jane, with what you're saying, that they there are specific processes for the changes and new buildings in the historic district. I'm not sure what this particular case is, but any changes in the historic district can always be reviewed by the HPC if they do require a certificate of appropriateness, and or if it's a landmark application. If anyone has any questions about what was approved, or they have a certain concern, they can definitely process that through the code enforcement team, and they'll work with us as well.
Okay. You know, it sort of sounds to me like it's important that as much as possible, we all understand, you know, the guidelines and the ordinance. So the more that we understand it, both, you know, as a community and individually, kind of the better we can do in making some of these judgments. We got another question that's not quite about the historic district, but it's how would the HPC be involved if I wanted to get a building landmark that is not in the historic district?
So the landmark process would go through the HPC initially, and then would go through the city council for the final decision. So the landmark application starts with the HPC would do the initial review and recommendation.
And I'm assuming that that's a different application than a COA application, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, good, thanks. Anything else you want to share with us?
No, I think all the questions covered it, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak from the City of Naperville. And as always, we're open to any questions or inquiries you have. Our inbox and phone is open, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, for answering our questions. I really appreciate having a face to put with the name. I think that makes the city that much more approachable for regular citizens. And thank you to all of our attendees for listening in. We hope you enjoyed this informative talk. This recording will be on our YouTube channel, complete with my opening flub. And join us next month when we will be talking with Lisa DiChiara from Landmarks, Illinois. Meanwhile, visit our new website, napervillepreservation.org, where you'll find lots of great information and photographs, as well as links to our email list, links to our YouTube channel, and how to find our Facebook page. You can email us anytime with your thoughts or just to let us know about some of your favorite hometown buildings. Thank you and good night.